welcome back to Nature's Divine Healing on Demand, where we're talking about today the healing powers of food here with Dr. Taggy Bensaid. She's an amazing naturopathic doctor, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today, so let's get into it. I'm so excited to be with Dr. Bensaid today, and she's going to talk all about naturopathic medicine and really about nutrition, and I'm so excited to bring this information to all of you of my YouTube channel today. So, Dr. Taggy, I just want to hear so much about you, you beautiful soul, inspiration to come down this journey.
Well, thank you for having me. And I love this question so much because my journey was a very conventional one. I'm a daughter of an MD, so I grew up with a lot of the medical model. And my dad used to volunteer and work with Operation Smile for the cleft palate. So my introduction to medicine was this amazing transformation. You basically go on a mission. You come with a child that it needs help, and they walk out of there completely fixed, quote unquote fixed. So I had this idea about medicine of being almost being a miracle worker, of making that transformation that way. So I grew up with this idea of wanting to become a medical doctor, and my whole idea was to be a plastic surgeon for burn units was what I wanted to do. And I started, actually, it was interesting because it wasn't until I started shadowing in the hospital in medical school that I realized, especially my first experience was in the ER, New York City, that the reality of becoming a medical doctor, or the healthcare system, at least in the US, was very different from that experience in, humanitarian missions. A lot of the work that we were doing was around prescription drugs. A lot of the work that we were doing about avoiding side effects or working around side effects of the prescription drugs. And a lot of it was treating symptoms. And it wasn't until my own journey. So I was diagnosed with PCOS. The PCOS is polycystic ovarian cysts, syndromes for people who are not familiar with it. So I had little cysts in my ovaries. That meant my menstruation were all over the place. And it means that every single month I would either have a menstruation or skip it because I have a cyst, and I will be in excruciating pain. When I say excruciating pain, I mean literally in the floor for hours. The only place shivering was normal, being in pain was normal. It was Tylenol and Aleve, and it was the rapid release ones, and it was just clockwise. I would just suffer through it. That was a good day. That was a good menstruation. If God forbid I have a cyst burst, that meant an ER visit. Almost every month, it was my better choice was being completely bedridden, not even like bathroom floor ridden for 6 hours, shivering and popping those pills, hoping it's going to go away and just moving through it, or being in the ER. That was my reality until when I was seeing a lot of oncologists, a lot of actually medical doctors, and all of them, their solution was two things. Let's try either hormone therapy. When that doesn't work, we try metformin and some of the medical prescription drugs. And if we can do that, then the last thing was, we're going to remove your right ovary. And I was like, I am 19 years old. I can have my right ovary removed. And it was really out of desperation. Like, I started seeking, there must be another thing. There must be some other solution here, not only for me, but for all of those people that I would see keep on coming back on the ER, because I was that person. I was working in the ER, but I was that person that had multiple visits to the ER. You don't treat a disease in the ER, but unfortunately for me, I couldn't even treat mine at my PCP. I couldn't treat it at my OBGYN. I couldn't treat it anywhere. I had no solution besides getting an organ removed. And I had no idea that even naturopathic medicine was a thing. I never heard of it ever, not even in medical. Like I literally was not reality of me. Like I am in New York City, in this big city, and I never heard of that as an option. I started looking into nutrition. I started looking into epidemiology and seeing how food can help the body um, heal itself, like why I'm not healing. And that took me into a journey of learning that there was something like holistic health. And it did not mean sniffing essential oils, because that was my idea, literally idea of like holistic health, like this woo-woo thing of like these people sniffing essential oils and hoping everything is going to be okay when we have all of this technology. So I came to it very arrogant. I came to it very, but it was such a humbling journey, because here I am now with two beautiful, healthy boys, and completely cyst free with like regular menstruation. I haven't had an Aleve or a Tylenol, I think, literally, I think in 10 years. So not even for a headache. I have it. So I, you know, to me, it was my own journey that took me where I am. And I'm so blessed that I got that diagnosed, because I think I would have still been in this arrogant mode of like, oh, why we don't need naturopathic help. But that's how my journey came about. It allowed me to really, really seek every single like avenue and how we can heal ourselves. And really, I think my biggest takeaway from all of this, that the body is designed to heal itself, and symptoms are meant to be body feedback. It's a way of communicating. It's not a way to, shush them, and it's not a way to actually have you remove an organ. It's telling you something is wrong, and it's telling you to do better, to feed it better, and it's giving you direction. And if we are listening, we can literally heal ourselves. So that was my journey.
Whew, Dr. Taggy, I literally am like over here cracking up at the synchronicities, because I feel like this YouTube channel probably hears about polycystic ovarian syndrome in every video, because it's part of my story. It's a part of a lot of women's stories. And I think that if anything, we're starting to see that this is a common issue among women that really shouldn't be a common issue among women. And so I love that you shared what you shared. And actually, like, my heart goes out, because quite frankly, today I'm physically struggling with my menstrual cycle. I had to break down and take acetaminophen, and then I had to break down about 3 hours after the acetaminophen and take some more Advil, because I tried taking all of my supplements and stuff, but this one's a doozy. And I was aware that I had a cyst on one of my ovaries. So I'm not sure if something bad, as if it's burst or something, but I was like, you know what, like, dag nabbit, like, I'm going to have to take medicine this time. But I was like, you know what? There's hope for me. All I have to do is keep focusing on the bigger picture, which is eating healthier, living a non-toxic lifestyle, and utilizing remedies that can help us in our lifestyle to heal. And so I love that you shared with us about how our bodies just want to heal themselves, and how when we take that initiative, they do so. I have some fun comments here. Jason from I'm Jason Designs, my good friend, he's here watching with us, and he says, happy Saturday, and hi, Dr. Taggy. It is so great to see you both. Thank you, Jason, for your support. I would not be here without good old Jason's support. So thank you for being my number one fan. So I want to ask you a question, Dr. Taggy. Can you tell us a little bit more about the education to become a naturopathic doctor and how it differs from med school or anything like that? I'm not too familiar on it.
So it's a very good question. So naturopathic doctor, is basically 4 years after college, and a lot of so to graduate, it may be the same amount of years. Then you specialize. We do still spend time in the hospital. We do some training at the hospital. We know how to do blood work. We learn how that part of it, but our focus is not so much in pharmaceutical. Like we don't do pharmaceutical as much. We don't do as much of the disease treatments. So we focus more on the herbs, we focus more on the supplements, and we focus more on the nutrition. My journey was a little bit different, is that I decided to actually go into what we call traditional naturopathic doctor. So I took it a step a little bit further to be able to really zero in, because, and this is not pooping on anyone, this is just like my own journey. I also see that even in the functional medicine or holistic model, sometimes we're treating symptoms with natural solutions. What I really wanted to do is treat the root cause. So I see it and hear it a lot, that people even come to me and say, I went to a naturopathic doctor, they told me that my estrogen was high, I got this pill, and it worked for a little bit, and now my endometriosis, my PCOS, my blah, my fertility, my this and that is coming back. And my answer to that is, but why? Your estrogen is high. Your estrogen did not wake up one morning and decided to be a tyrant and like dominate the rest of your hormones. That's not how it works. There is a root cause. And this is one of the reasons that for everyone here who are listening and curious about how you can become a naturopathic doctor, you have the choice of going through the become a naturopathic physician when you go through the 4 years and then you're done. Or you can also go through another type of 4 years, which is the traditional naturopathic doctor, which is a little bit more focused on the root cause, in my opinion. And we're still very focused on supplements. I mean, we sell supplements, but a lot of our training is on herbs. So I learned also a lot about how to tell someone, I have patients overseas, to let them get this herb rather than just being very focused on this supplement. But after the 4 years of graduating of grad school, so it's 8 years total, then you decide on what you want to specialize in. You also decide on what kind of modalities you want to bring to your practice. Muscle response testing is the one that I use in my practice. I also went the route of like even more woo-woo for someone who was so arrogant. I went on more of the emotional part of it as well, the spiritual healing as well. So I went some on that training as well. That took me about another 4 years. So depending on what you want to focus on, there's people that do iridology, there's people that do things like testing with machines. But the baseline to just graduate and be able to start seeing your patient one, which is always a big day, is after 8 years after high school. So 4 years of undergrad, depending on school, some of them would just require the 2 years and prerequisites, and then 4 years. But I was already almost, first year of med school, so I was transferring to 4 years of naturopathic school.
Wow, that's so amazing. I was under the impression it was 4 years after a bachelor's degree as well, but then to hear about the specialization and everything that goes into it, and then to hear that you also trained in a hospital, that's really amazing too. It gives you a full picture of what
100%.
being an ND really looks like. So amazing. So I want you to, I'm always talking about the causes of illness and disease, and I'm always talking about how there's 3 factors. And so when I'm talking about this, I'm always trying to explain that the 3 factors are biological, and then you have environmental and lifestyle. But when I talk about biological factors, I usually try to focus on like what's happening in our body, not necessarily our genes, because I don't think that we are genetically bound to have diseases. I think that if mom ate, fried chicken in Crisco and we eat fried chicken in Crisco, we're probably going to end up in the same place with the same types of illnesses. So I want to ask you, can you explain to us how illness or disease occurs and like what really is the root cause of these chronic conditions that we see today?
I love that you said biological and environmental, because I talk about 5 causes. I talk about stress, I talk about toxins, I talk about pathogens, and I talk about structure. So people forget about that. Like if you're not going to the chiropractor, if you're pouching, if your structure is not good, you're stopping healings. And the 5th one will be scars, like actual trauma happening to your body. And the reason why, and those may act biological will fall into structure, will fall into pathogen, environmental will be your environment that you live in. But you mentioned genes, and I love that because in my realm, you're never doomed. You can be born with a genetic makeup, but that's just a predisposition.
Right.
So the root cause of diseases to me is your lifestyle, which meaning what you feed yourself, what fuel are you putting in your body. The other root cause is the environmental. What is external? What are you living in that your body cannot fight off? The environmental also could be the stress, the people you live with. Environmental is not just what you're smelling or the mold in your house and all of that, but also the toxic people that may be around you. But I believe it always comes back to you and to the cell and to your soul. So I call it's like almost cell and soul health. It comes back to what is weakening your immune system. 70% of the time, I think we know what the answer is food. and the other thing is also what is emotional trauma? What kind of dense energy you haven't released that now those pathogens, those bugs, those microbes are taking advantage of you, that you have a weaker body, and they sense that lower energy and take advantage of it. So the root cause to me is two things: is the physical body with everything that goes around it, and the energy and the emotion and everything that goes around it. But we always want to think about the first thing you do is what you consume. What you consume determines your health. What are you watching? What are you reading? Who are you talking to? What are you eating? What are you wearing? What are you smelling? So the root cause to disease, to me, to keep it simple, is everything you consume. If you don't like where you are in your health or mental health, physical health, emotional health, look at what are you consuming.
I love that you are talking about consumption, because a lot of people don't think about scrolling on Instagram as consumption or scrolling TikTok as consumption, but they impact not only our mental health, but our spiritual health as well. Sometimes some of these TikToks, I swear the other day I was on TikTok for about 15 minutes and I was like, you know what? This is not the right vibe. Like, I was like, there's a lot of negativity out there that I don't need to open the portal to. And you wouldn't necessarily think of that as something that's an unhealthy consumption, right? Like alcohol or eating a ton of McDonald's food, but it really can be. And that's why we have to have boundaries in place to really make sure that we are consuming things that are healthy for our mind, healthy for our bodies, and healthy for our spirit. So I really loved that you shared that. I love that your 5 causes. I feel like maybe I'm roping too much into lifestyle, and I love how you expand on that, because I think of lifestyle as like your spiritual health, your mental health, your stress management. Some people don't think about preventing stressors, like you said, like who are you around? What are you around? And things like that. So I love that you shared that. My next question to you is how nutrition is to overall health outcomes.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Can you say it again? There is an echo. I don't know if it's just from me.
Oh no. Let's see here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is how important is it, if you had to put it in a percentage, like it's 30% important to overall health or 70% important to overall health, how important is proper nutrition to overall health outcomes?
Yeah. To me, it's 70%. That's why I tell my patient, I tell at least 70%, if not more. So what I tell people, and I just gave this analogy yesterday to one of my patients, I'm like, supplements are just a supplementation to a good diet and a good lifestyle. It's just we're just supplements, because people will come to me and say, what can you give me something for that? I literally had someone yesterday, it's like, I just have the mucus. I'm like, did you cut out the dairy? Did you cut out everything I told you to cut out last week? And they were like, well, no, but I'm like, it's not ethical for me to keep on giving you supplements, because the best analogy, and I gave it, it was about candida. Maybe your audience is familiar with what candida is. But I told him, it's imagine you are in a war against candida. And candida is winning this war right now. And you come to me and I give you weapons. I give you the weapons so you can fight the candida. But you still have to do two things. Stand up and fight, use the weapons so you can fight, and stop feeding the candida. You are team you are not team the candida. So basically, to me, the diet is standing up and showing up to the war, to the battle. The weapons have no bearing. They have no use if you're sitting in a corner being like, well, I have my weapon. Well, great. But you're literally gonna get killed in this case. That's what turns into diseases. That's how we get sick. So to me, it's at the very least 70%.
That's so funny that you said that. Mom, if you're watching this video, Dr. Taggy just told you to put down the Jimmy Dean sausages because that's why your scalp's still itching, girlfriend. So my mom went to the dermatologist and paid $100 after I literally said, I have this feeling you just need to stop eating bread. Like I was like, anything with grains in it, I just have this feeling like I feel like something's off and like it's the grains, like you got to stop eating it. So then she goes to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have this like scalp thing. It's basically a yeast infection on top of her head. It's candida. And so I was like, oh, how about that? You should stop eating bread. Is that what the dermatologist told you? And she was like, well, yeah. And so I was like, so did you get rid of all those frozen sausage biscuits in your freezer? And she's like, oh, no, I'm still eating it, but I got this new stuff for my scalp and I'm trying it out. And I'm just like, none of these remedies are going to work if you don't fix the initial problem that's causing the issue in the first place.
Exactly.
So, and I love that you just drew that out for people because I think it's American culture and maybe even Western culture for us to like throw things at something rather than trying to take the steps to solve the problem. And we're always looking for that quick fix. And sometimes we think that with natural remedies, I've even seen people be like, what herb can I take for this? Well, let's get to the multi-dimensions of the problem. Let's not just throw some sort of new remedy at it. Just because it's not pharmaceuticals doesn't necessarily mean that just taking an herb for your problem is going to solve it. We've always got to get back to that cause. So I love that you shared that with us. So I want to ask you a couple more questions. My next question is specifically about food. And I'm always talking about how people should eat more food and less crap. And crap being like the carbonated drinks. I even try to warn people about their seltzer waters because the CO2 is keeping them from actually hydrating the way that's needed for their kidney function. I'm always talking about refined sugars and flours and how that they can impact our lives and our absorption of the minerals and nutrients that we need each day. I'm always talking about artificial sweeteners and flavors and dyes and how they can impact our health. And lastly, I'm always talking about processed meats, processed foods in general, and any type of like preservatives or chemicals that are placed in our foods that are just like, I tell people, if you can't pronounce it and you wouldn't pick it up at the store to cook with tonight, just leave it. Like, just leave it there. And I tell people all the time, if it comes in a box or a bag, it's probably not food. So we know what crap is. And if we know that food is fresh fruits and vegetables, organic lean meats, grass-fed, if you're a meat eater, I am slowly turning towards the idea of veganism. I keep hearing that good things about it, and I'm doing my research and basically saying bon voyage to chicken. Like I'm like giving it its proper send off. But organic, lean, grass-fed meats, if you're eating them, and omega-3s and things like that, and making sure to hydrate, drink water. But are there any other foods that you feel like people should specifically avoid?
So I mentioned that you already said all of these things. I think my best advice for everyone, and I said it a lot, is about there is no one size fits all. There really isn't. Even for I'm not plant-based. I eat a lot of plants, but I also believe my body functions way better by eating meat. And I may even function better at certain times when I'm eating red meat that has higher fat, not even lean meat. And some other period, I'm like, my body is only craving vegetables and fruit. Like that's it. I can't, my liver is like, I need a break. The reason why I'm saying it that way is I want to tell everyone with everything that Kiana just shared. So if you're eating whole food already and you're curious of what you could do, I want you to keep a food journal and see how you feel. Because there is certain food that at a certain time may be feeding certain organisms. A good example of peanuts. Peanuts are great food, they're a great source of protein, they're a great source of fat. But even if you think that every single time you eat a peanut, peanuts tend to have fermentation in them. They tend to have mold grow on them. So if you are prone to yeast infection, if you have gut issues, cutting peanuts may be worth it, but you may never be able to know that if you did not keep the food journal. Same thing for nuts in general. They are the best thing. But also, if you are fighting a virus, they are very high in L-arginine, which is an amino acid, and very low in L-lysine. And you may be needing that L-lysine, so avoiding the nuts may be a good thing. Fermented food, it's especially like I live in an area that's very hipster and everyone is about their fermented food, everyone is making their own kombucha. But again, if you have a yeast issue, you may not be doing well with that fermentation because you're adding more fermentation to an area that's already has imbalance. So you want to kill the bad bacteria first, the parasites or the fungus or whatever, before you put that fermentation. But the best way for you to know that, I tell people, don't even listen to me. Listen to your body. The best way to know that is keep a journal. If you notice that every single time you have that kombucha, you feel tired, and you may brush it off because kombucha is healthy. What do you mean? It may not be that. It may be something else. Keep a journal for a week, for 2 weeks, and highlight your symptoms and see if there is any correlation with something that you had that day. I tell people, look 12 hours before. We are trained that symptoms have to happen right away. That's not true. Your body may be metabolizing things a little bit longer. So give it 12-hour look, keep a food log, keep your symptoms, keep your food, and see if there is any correlation between the symptoms and how you're feeling. And it doesn't mean never. I'm one of those unicorns that can do dairy, and everyone hates me for it, but there is sometimes, and also even when I say dairy, it has to be goat cheese, sheep, those quality, not highly processed. It has to be more of that, like the original form. But even sometimes when I'm like I'm literally turned into this vampire for feta cheese, I know it's my cue to hold back, and I will like, okay, now I see it. Maybe I was more constipation, more my bowels were not moving because I was eating more feta, and I have to pull back. And after I pull back for a little bit, after a couple of weeks or so, I can do it again in moderation. So if you keep your food log and you're like, oh my God, she's taking my almond butter away from me. I am not. I'm just saying not for now. Give your immune system the chance to fight what it needs to be fighting, and then you can reintroduce it again in moderation. But the best way to do that, you don't know, no one knows your body like you. You have a unique makeup. So keep a food log with your symptoms and what you're eating. Keep it for a couple of weeks, see if there is any correlation between how you feel and what you ate and what you consume in general. And that would be my best diet for you, my best diet advice for you if you're already eating whole food.
That's great advice, Dr. Taggy. And another little tip, there is an app on the App Store called Symptom Tracker, guys. It's really great. It helps you take detailed notes of your symptoms. It has a lot of different buttons in there, and you can take notes on what you ate throughout that day too. And that might be a great app to utilize to track all of these things as well. So thank you, Dr. Taggy, for saying that. And I really loved what you shared about tracking it back 12 hours, because it could be 12 hours ago what you ate. And so, a lot of people think that things are going to hit immediately as well, or what did I eat this morning type thing, but what did I eat in the last 12 hours? So now that we've talked about what to avoid, I want to ask you about what foods are best for our health, and what foods do you feel like we all need to make sure that we're eating?
Well, depending on the person. So if you are a meat eater, I am a big fan of meat in the sense, if you are a meat eater, if you're not, and we're going to have a conversation about that in a second. But if you are, I do like that it brings us myoglobin. It brings us the heme iron that's different from the non-heme iron. It's very absorbable. It gives us collagen. It gives us the B12. But my first thing I want to say for meat eater or non-meat eater, make sure you're getting enough of B vitamin from food. The most complex way to get B vitamin for meat eaters is meat. For non-meat eaters is nutritional yeast. And with the amount of stress that we've been over the last 2 years, I see not enough people are getting their B vitamins for a fact. So if you're stressed, make sure you're getting your B vitamins either through meat or nutritional yeast. The other one that I see people are not getting enough is unrefined sea salt. A lot of people, we demonize the salt. That's sodium chloride. It's not the same thing as unrefined sea salt. You want a salt that has a color, pink Himalayan, black salt, Celtic sea salt. Those colors, that color that you see, those are your minerals, those are your electrolytes. And I know you said sea salt is best. I'm going to go with N refined sea salt, UN refined sea salt, because a lot of the sea salt that I see in the supermarket is white sea salt. And I'm like, I don't care if it says sea salt in it. If it's white, it's bleached. You don't want the bleached salt. You want all of your minerals. So if you suffer from dizziness, if you're tired, I can, like 90% of the time, I tell people, have your unrefined sea salt, and I see not enough people are having it. The last thing I would say, what best advice I would say is get away from the 6 meals a day. Give your pancreas, give your GI tract a break in between meals. So a lot of that, what I call it the housekeeping of your GI tract, happens after 2.5 hours after you ate. That's when it goes, your body has a specific kind of spasm to start cleaning any kind of undigested food. That if you're eating every other hour, every 2 hours, like we were trained, I mean, I was even trained as a medical doctor to say that, like every 2 hours, small meals, or if you're working out, small meals throughout the day. That food that doesn't have a time to get flushed out, guess what? It stays in your GI tract and it ferments and it creates gut issues. And like Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, has said, all disease starts in the gut. So your disease starts in the gut, and you have to make sure that your gut is healthy. You feed it properly and you give it a break so it can do its housekeeping.
Amazing, Dr. Taggy. I swear, you just dropped some bombs. I got a question. I got to follow up this question really quick, because you just told us to get away from eating the way that we all thought was okay to eat. So I'm wondering, is it okay if one of our like meals is like more on like the juice side, or like is that how it should be? Maybe like instead of like trying to eat like every so many hours, like should we like trade out a meal for like just drinking a juice or drinking water or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say always like listen to your body. I'm someone who naturally navigates towards intermittent fasting. So in the morning, I would either not have anything, or have a juice, or have a herbal blend. So those adaptogen, like if you're familiar with them, those adaptogen kind of drinks that I would have in the morning. So I naturally do intermittent fasting. But I also tell people, even just doing 3 square meals is ideal. And if you're hungry after 3 hours, you're probably not having enough fat or food in your meal at lunch. That is probably what is happening, because a lot of people are like, well, I have lunch at noon. By 3 p.m. I cannot make it to dinner at 5. I'm like, well, that tells me that you're probably not having enough fat or protein or vegetables in your lunch, and you're probably going towards more of the refined carbohydrate, like eating a lot of white bread or a lot of rice, that spikes your insulin and then drops it back off. And then after 3 hours, you're like, I need a rapid fuel again. So juicing, yes, but only if it actually helps you hold to the next meal. So because the way I eat and the way my body works now, that I can skip breakfast and not be famished by 10. I can make it until my break at 1 when I'm done seeing patient for lunch. But someone else that says, okay, I'm going to do a juice, but then 10 p.m., 10 a.m., they have a headache, they're exhausted. Don't do that to yourself. Have a proper breakfast, but have the proper breakfast that's giving you a fuel for 4 to 5 hours.
Yeah. I heard once from a chiropractor. I was being seen by a chiropractor, and he told me, he was like, Kiana, the best thing you can do for your body is to prioritize protein in the morning. And he was like, definitely let go of the toast. He was like, let the toast go, the bagels go. I know that's how you kids were taught to eat in the mornings, but he was like, I wouldn't necessarily always tell people to eat bacon, because in moderation, everything in moderation. But he was like, it's better to eat bacon in the morning than a piece of toast, because you need that protein early in the morning. And so, yes, I really loved what you shared. I feel like I'm kind of like that too. I just kind of eat when my body says it's ready for foods.
Mm-hmm. That's the smartest way. It knows. It knows. It's sending you the right hormones. It knows.
So when it's like, hey girl, I'm hungry, I'm like, okay, let's get something to eat. So but yes, I loved what you shared about that. And I want to ask one last question on food specifically. Can you tell us a little bit more about intermittent fasting and how to do it properly, so the people of this channel will know the health benefits?
So the best thing is get you very comfortable with 3 square meals a day without being hungry in between. Then when I tell people, start shortening your eating window by half an hour in the morning, by half an hour at night. So let's say your first meal is at 7 a.m. and your last one is at 6 p.m. Start moving your 7 o'clock one to 7:30. And see slowly how you are doing. When you're shortening your eating window and but you need to drink a lot of water, put the unrefined sea salt in the water, make sure that you're having your electrolyte and minerals so you're not tired. And you would find an eating window that is good for you. And the eating window that's good for you may still be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that's totally fine. But in my case, I naturally never woke up hungry, but it was drilled in my head. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it was never making me feel good. It would make me sluggish, actually, because my body's like, the kitchen was closed. I wasn't ready for this. What are you doing? So it would actually take more energy for my body try to digest the food, that it wasn't welcoming. It's like literally like a kitchen, a restaurant that is not open, and someone walking through the kitchen and trying to make a meal. It will be a disaster. The chef is not there. That's how I imagine. That's how I tell people. Same thing at night. When you're eating too late, your pancreas has shut down a long time ago because it has circadian rhythm. And then when you're eating too late, it's the same thing. It's like walking into a kitchen in the middle of the night and trying to eat. It's a disaster in the morning. And so listening to your body. But my biggest tip for intermittent fasting is making sure you have enough fat and protein in your meals, because fats are healthy fats, of course. I'm talking about healthy fats, your nuts, your avocado, your coconut, your olives. Make sure you have enough of that, because that will give you more of a long-term fuel than a white refined carbohydrate that is more in an instant type of fuel. And make sure you're doing your unrefined sea salt, because to me that made the biggest difference. I was lacking my electrolytes and my minerals, and the only way I was getting them is through food. So when I start using that in my water or drinking, so I drink distilled water, and when I start putting the minerals back in, it made a huge difference for me.
Wow, that's so amazing. So unrefined sea salt, y'all. We're gonna do this. I have some pink. I use pink Himalayan salt at my house, so I'm a step ahead. My mom, she was like, "Oh, don't use the salt," and I was like, "Well, this salt's better than any of the other salt, so it's fine." But I really loved having you on today. And I lastly just want to wrap up this interview with, we all know that healthcare disparities exist, and I'm wondering if you've seen healthcare disparities impact patients. And it sounds like you did from childhood, because your dad was involved with the missionaries and getting kids their cleft palates removed. So
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm not even gonna talk about that or the obvious. I'm gonna talk just in my practice. I focus a lot on what I call the neuroendocrine system. So a lot of my patients would either have anxiety or depression, and I can see it every single time.
wow, I'm not sure what happened, but yeah. Dr. Taggy was talking about her experience in her own practice with healthcare disparities, and she was talking about, I believe, how stress impacts about different individuals. It would have been great to hear. I guess we got disconnected, but that's okay. I want to thank everybody who came out to listen to this episode of Nature's Divine Healing on Demand. And we're talking about the healing power of food. And it's been an amazing episode with Dr. Taggy Bensaid, naturopathic doctor. And so, yes. And so Dr. Taggy is back. Hello, Dr. Taggy.
Hi, my phone decided to restart. When those upgrade for the Samsung, I was like, wow, perfect timing. You couldn't give us 5 more minutes.
That is okay. I'm the queen of stalling. So I was like, we'll just roll to me talking about this episode. And so it's completely fine. But you were talking about, I think you said the neuroendocrine system.
Yeah, so nervous system and hormones. But as a naturopath, we address the root cause. So meaning we are trained to, it doesn't matter. I treat it the same way. It doesn't matter what you come to me with. Doesn't matter what the symptom or the diagnosis. It's always about addressing the root cause. So when someone comes to me, it could be anxiety, but it could also be treating the mold. Mold or anxiety would make you breathe a certain way, would cause anxiety. And I can see it without a fault. All of my male patients that come to me with anxiety have a heart test. If they go with a panic attack to the ER, they would have a very thorough heart testing. 99.5% of my female patients, unless they have high blood pressure, it's in their head. They will be told anxiety is because of stress, is because you're this, is because you're that, and it's in your head. So that alone, just right off the bat, literally 100% of my male patients get, this is not even social disparity. This, I'm just talking about off the bat, same race, same everything. Just because you're a woman, you are more going to be seen as this is a symptom that's in your head or not be taken seriously. While a male patient will be given more of the testing and be giving, even though, none of them is the right approach anyways, but it's, I'm just, that is, for example, a big difference that I see in the medical model, in my field especially.
This one hits home for me, Dr. Taggy, because that actually happened to me. I was so worried about my chest pain that I called 911 to have an ambulance come get me. And I get to the hospital and they're trying to tell me it's anxiety. And I had to fight my doctor. I had to be like, no, you're going to check this heart again because I know it's not anxiety. And they ended up admitting me to cardiology for 4 days. And so I'm not convinced that they actually thoroughly figured out what's going on with my heart. They kind of just was like, well, we think it's just sinus tachycardia and a heart spasm. So here's these beta blockers. We don't really know why you need them, but you should definitely keep taking them because they're keeping you stable. So here's hoping for better doctors in the future in a different area, hopefully when I relocate. But yeah, it is so terrible that like this happens to us. Like I literally was like, something's wrong with my heart. And literally, Dr. Taggy, this doctor looked me in the eye and said, you can take my medical opinion or leave it. And when that troponin level tripped at a cardiac level of care, she looked really stupid. Like she looked really stupid saying something like that to me.
It's funny that you said that because I've even forgot about this until you said it. I had this conversation with an actual other MD. It was my annual and I mentioned that I had a chest pain. And I literally am like, I go to my MD like yearly. There is a reason to go to your medical doctor. I call it trauma care. So if you have trauma, and the other thing that I love about medical doctors is they have so much money. So they have so much access to testing. They have beautiful ways to test. So imaging. And as a naturopath, I don't have that in my practice. And I remember saying like, hey, there's something, can you send me a requisition so I can get my heart checked? I just want to make sure that there's nothing structurally. That's everything that I'm doing, because I'm not missing something from a structure perspective. And she said, well, you have acid reflux. And I was like, what? And she literally looked at me. She goes, you're 20. At that time I was 29. She's like, you're 29 years old. You don't have a history of heart disease. It must be acid reflux. And I want to be like, are you kidding me? I am right in front of you with the title of a doctor. You know that I know better. Like, this is not even patronizing your average patient. She's
right.
Another doctor. I don't know what acid reflux is. I literally looked at her like, we took the same anatomy class. Like, what is going on right now? I literally thought I was being pranked. And I think my reaction was exactly that when I went, what? And then at the very end, like, I think I startled her. I think like she was not expecting this. She goes, okay, well, just tell me what test you want. I was like, that's better. But imagine if I did not know what test I wanted. Why would the average patient know that's the job of the doctor? Right. What do you have to do is the same thing. I have the same conversation about like thyroid. We run 11 tests. Medical doctors run one. They run a TSH, which is more about the pituitary, to be honest, than thyroid. They may or may not run a free T4 or free T3. And when I give my patient the 411, when I ask them to do the 411, they are like, well, my medical doctor don't want to. I'm like, it's not her blood, it's yours. What does she care? Like, just freaking run it. So I think those are like a big, I see it a lot in my practice, maybe because I see more women, so I hear more of these stories. But about, that is another one that I see, especially with minorities, an assumption that they're eating, that's it because of the food that they're eating. There is a belief system that depending on your race, you may be eating better than another race. And I'm not saying that's not true culturally. Like, I live in Michigan, we have Dearborn. I know that I fight them over their rice and their pita bread every day. Like, but it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's an assumption that, why don't you ask the question? Ask the question. I think the biggest thing is the assumption that are made depending on a skin color or a gender or a social economy, like assuming that someone who may whatever drive that you see, the car that you see them like pulling up with to your practice, assume that they're eating from whole food. That's not probably true. And it doesn't mean that they're eating from whole food. And you just mentioned that they're not eating not good food. You can be eating from a farmer's market. There is so many different things. And I think that's the biggest one. I say the assumption, because of the appearance, and the appearance covers almost everything, as I said, from race to socioeconomic to gender.
It's so interesting that you said that. I recently went to an orthopedic that told me that the stiffness in my hands was cramping. And like that the joint stiffness was cramping, Dr. Taggy. And then he told me that I should eat more nutritional foods. And I was like, I just lost 100 pounds by switching what I ate. So I don't think the food's the problem. But if you would have read my chart to hear the whole thing, maybe. But also my hip was hurting because of the one time of having pancreatitis. Like, I don't know where some of these people went to medical school, but like, I don't even have a medical degree. And I'm like, how does this make sense? Like, how does my pancreatitis one time do with this chronic hip pain? They're totally different. Like, how does that help me figure that out?
Shortcuts. It's called shortcuts. There are shortcuts. There are symptom shortcuts. And unfortunately, you brought up a very good point. Did he ask you about your diet? He didn't. He just assumed you were not eating great for whatever reason, like that to me is a problem. Like, my first thing I do to my patient is I ask them to write a food log before their first visit. I'm not going to make any assumption. I don't care, even if your address tells me that you live in the middle of farms, I'm not going to assume you eat from the farm. I'm going to ask you a question. And I think that is the biggest thing. There is not enough questions. There is a lot of shortcuts and assumptions. And I understand that because of the healthcare system is more, if it's a number healthcare system, diagnosis, it's a bunch of symptoms that are under an insurance code. Patients are under names and their numbers. So I think, and we see in the medical model that you see a lot of people. And you see them once every blue moon. It's a numbers number. It's a numbers game. And when you're in a numbers game, you are about shortcuts because you have to move quickly. Right. But you are establishing a relationship like you should. You shouldn't be seeing your doctor once a year. You shouldn't be seeing your doctor. It's a hygiene. You should be getting the education. That's what a doctor means. Doctor actually means teacher. It doesn't mean God complex. It means teacher. So our job should be to teach you. What I tell my patient, I'm like, I should be like a lawyer. You're happy to see me when you need me, but you're like, peace out when you don't. Meaning that you should come to me to help you get the tools so you don't need to ever see me again. Yes, you come to me when you are a new level, when you go through another layer. But my job is to put you on the right track so you know how to listen to your body. And moving forward, you have the tools to help your body heal itself.
That's amazing, Dr. Taggy. You're amazing. And if you want to become one of Dr. Taggy's amazing patients, please check out the link in the description to become a patient. She also hosts a monthly deep wound healing circle that you should totally join in the link to this description. So please, please, please support Dr. Taggy. And if you want to talk more about medicine versus nutrition, I will be hosting a webinar on March 24th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're catching this video way after March, that's okay, because if you want a strategy session with me, go ahead and click the link in the description and fill out the short 15 to 20 minute coaching questionnaire. We've had an amazing episode, Dr. Taggy. It was great.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Sorry for the Samsung upgrade.
Oh, it's okay. One time it happened to me, and I'm the host of the show, and my guest was just like, I hope Kiana's coming back. So it happens to everybody, and it's totally fine. It's the age of technology. No, even technology is not without fault, or mistakes. So nothing's perfect, which is refreshing. That even the technology is not even perfect. So I just thank you so much for being here and for being a guest on my YouTube channel and for sharing your wisdom with all of the world today. I think that Dr. Taggy was absolutely amazing. And everyone, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We thank you so much for tuning in, and have a good day. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.